You know, small talk gets a bad rap. Some people say it's shallow or fake or a waste of time. But here's the thing, it's also how deals get started, how teams bond, and how you stop being a stranger. I didn't understand the value of small talk until I experienced it firsthand. The first time I walked into a boardroom in South Korea, everyone was silent. No introductions, no chit chat, and I thought, well, this is awkward. But one manager broke the ice by asking if I had tried Korean barbecue yet. And we ended up laughing over lunch. And that moment changed everything. It turns out small talk wasn't small at all. It was the start of real trust. And he's still a good friend to this day. So, think about this. Small talk isn't about the weather. It's about opening the door. Welcome to All About English Mastery, and this is 15-Minute Mastery. And let me tell you about one guy. He was real quiet, but he used small talk to land his dream job. So let me tell you about Dan. Oops, let's not change the slide yet. Dan was a really smart guy. He had a really great resume. But in interviews, he froze up. Not during the technical questions, because he really crushed those. He was really good at his job. But it was the small talk at the beginning of the interviews that really got him and prevented him from getting jobs. So I got him on a simple practice schedule, learning some simple phrases and questions. Things like, how's your week been? Or, that's a great mug. Are you a coffee person? Guess what? The next interview, he warmed up the room in seconds. The hiring manager even said, wow, you're really easy to talk to. And Dan got the job. And he told me it wasn't his skills that made the difference. It was the first 60 seconds. So, how do you get better at small talk? That's the question for today's 10-minute mastery section. Let's see if we can do it in 10 minutes. We kind of went overtime last time, so I left Mr. Chip at home. Let's break it down. Okay. We'll start simple. If small talk feels awkward, that's okay. If you have a problem with it, you know you're not alone. Even native speakers sometimes have challenges with small talk. Okay? It's not about being clever or telling jokes. It's about making a real connection with people. And so we're going to talk about some simple steps that you can take to become more effective at small talk. All right. So the first thing is use universal topics. It's really the best way to start something, start a conversation. Weather. You start with the weather. It's safe. It's familiar. Weekend plans. Or, hey, coffee. Drinking a cup of coffee and having a chat. It's easy to discuss. And they're not boring topics. They're the bridges. They create shared ground and help break up the silence without feeling too intrusive. You're not asking personal questions here. You're just asking simple things. And that's why they work so well in situations where you're meeting someone for the first time, or you're trying to ease into a conversation with someone who you work with. So, you can start with something simple like, oh, look, looks like the rain finally stopped. Or, wow, give a compliment. That's a nice setup. Do you work from home full time? If you're complimenting somebody's computer rig. So these simple low pressure comments give the other person an easy way to respond. And then once the conversation is flowing, you can move into more meaningful topics. So just notice something and say it out loud. That's it. Notice something and say it out loud. And then you're opening the door to connection. All right, here's my first tip. Give a compliment. Okay? Give a compliment. You should always keep it honest. It should always be honest. You know, if you like somebody's tie, say, wow, that's a sharp tie. Or, ooh, I like your notebook. Where'd you get it? People appreciate when you notice the little things. Okay? It helps you to build a rapport. It builds connection. You know, Dale Carnegie, in one of my favorite books, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he famously said, be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. That's a very fancy way of saying give people compliments a lot. Just give out compliments about everything you can. Because he believed that sincere compliments can break down walls and build immediate rapport. Rapport is that connection. Compliments, when they're authentic, shows that you're observant, warm, and you're human. Everybody likes to be complimented. And in the context of small talk, that tiny compliment could be the spark that turns silence into a smile and a quick chat into a real connection. You might make some good friends. Okay, I just talked to somebody about this, and it's all about asking open-ended questions. It is a very important key for small talk. Don't just ask something like, did you have a good weekend? Instead, go in with, what did you get up to over the weekend? Because that invites more than a yes or a no. It requires the person to expand and talk more. You know, I'm working on a course called Hidden Conversation Hacks, and I talk a lot about this because it's one of the fastest ways to build a real connection. Open-ended questions invite stories and opinions and personal details that help you learn about the other person. And they show the other person that you're not just being polite, you're genuinely interested. Plus, they take the pressure off of you. You're not trying to think of something to say because you just let them do all the talking. Once you ask a good, open-ended question, the conversation tends to take on a life of its own. And that's where the magic with conversations begins to happen. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little grammar that can help. If you want to sound more natural in English, use question tags. These are little phrases like, isn't it? Or don't you? Or wasn't it? That help keep the conversation going. Okay? Question tags usually match the verb tense and the polarity of the sentence. So if your statement is positive, your tag is negative. For example, it's a nice day. Positive. Isn't it? Negative. It's a nice day, isn't it? And if your statement is negative, then the tag flips positive. So the negative statement could be, you haven't been here before, have you? You haven't been here before. That's negative. Haven't. Have you? Positive. That's the question tag. So this creates a back and forth, a friendly rhythm, and invites another person to respond. Okay? So here's some examples. Wow, nice weather, isn't it? You've worked with them before, haven't you? Whew. That was a tough meeting, wasn't it? So these little additions show that you're not just making a statement, you're inviting the other person in. So you make a statement and then you tag it with that little question at the end. It's very useful. All right. When you are talking with someone, you want to try to use present perfect tense in your grammar. Present perfect tense. So What is it? What do I mean? What do I mean by that? If you're referring to something recent and relevant, the present perfect can be your friend. For example, you can say, "Have you seen the new cafeteria yet?" It sounds more natural than, "Did you see the cafeteria?" Because "Did you see the cafeteria" is not really open. That's just kind of a random question. Okay? And if you want to be polite or show curiosity, you can also use indirect questions. Okay? Do you know where the new team room is? Instead of just, where's the team room? See there? We started with, do you know? It's indirect. Indirect questions, they start with things like, do you know, or could you tell me, or would you happen to know? And they don't really change the word order inside the question. So instead of where is it, you say, do you know where it is? And that small change goes a long way to making your sound more friendly and thoughtful. Okay? It softens that tone. All right. Use your surroundings when you are at an event or at a restaurant or anywhere. Maybe you're at a meeting or a conference. Try to use your surroundings to help you start the small talk. Try this. Wow, this session's been really helpful. What did you think of the speaker? It puts you on the same page as the other person right away, and it gives them a chance to express their opinion. And this works especially well in professional settings. It shows that you're paying attention and that you're open to hearing others' thoughts. And you're not just making conversation, you're making space. By asking even a simple question, like that one that I gave you an example, that can lead to a more meaningful exchange about shared interests, work challenges, or future collaboration. It's a small doorway, but it becomes much bigger, a much bigger connection down the line. Okay. When you are preparing your day, going through, it's always good to have a few handy lines, some ready-made lines to use in advance. We call them conversation starters. So get your questions ready and practice them ahead of time. You could say, hey, busy week? Did you have a busy week? Yeah, sometimes we do. How about this one? What brings you here today? That's a great way to get someone going. Notice these questions. They're all open-ended questions. Except for the first one. That's a yes or no. Have you tried any good coffee places lately? That's a yes or no, but you could easily add on an additional question to that. Oh, what coffee place around here would you recommend? Also, making connections. How do you know the host or the team or the client? How do you know this person? Because if they know this person, they might be able to make you an introduction. Okay. So, finally, we're going to talk about the last one, and this one is probably the most important. Listen. And I mean really listen. If someone mentions a trip, ask them about it. If they say they're new, welcome them. It's the follow-up that turns small talk into a connection. Small talk isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. Present. Here, in the now. Present. So, I want to hear your comments. What is your go-to small talk line? Or what's a small talk moment that led to something big in your life or in your career? Let us know down in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And if you have any questions, now would be a good time to put them in, because I might have a couple of minutes here to take some Q&A after we're finished. All right, and your weekly challenge is this. Start one small talk conversation every day. Just one. At work or online or in line for coffee, it doesn't matter. But try one of the phrases from today or some variation and notice how people respond. You might be surprised. And hey, if this episode has helped you, hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. And you can find the full blog post and even more connection tips at allaboutenglishmastery.com or the original blog post in the link in the description. And be sure to sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a tip. All right, now it's time for the Mastery Minute. And today's Mastery Minute phrase is break the ice. Break the ice. You know, have you ever found yourself in a meeting staring at someone across the table? Both of you pretending your coffee is more interesting than the silence? Yep, that's when you need to break the ice. Without a doubt, you got to break the ice. But let's rewind. What does that mean, break the ice? Well, back in the day when rivers froze over, trade ships got stuck. They couldn't move forward until a special kind of ship, the icebreaker, plowed ahead and cleared a path. No icebreaker, no progress. It's as simple as that. Now think of conversation in the same way. Sometimes things feel frozen, tense, awkward, or just plain silent. But when you speak up, you're the icebreaker. You're clearing the way for the connection. So, the next time you're in a quiet room or on a Zoom call with no one talking, say something small. A comment on the weather, a compliment, a simple question like, how's your week been? It doesn't need to be brilliant. It just needs to open the path. Because when you break the ice, you make room for real conversation. All right. We're going over a little bit, but I'm going to give you a teaser. Next lesson or next session on Friday night at 9:30 p.m., we are diving into one of the most misunderstood grammar points in English, even though. So if you've ever felt unsure about how to use it naturally, then we've got your back. Don't miss it. And we'll do our best to get your questions answered. All right. So thanks for spending these few minutes with me. I know we're a little over time, but remember, small talk may feel small, but the impact can be huge. One question, one comment, one connection at a time. And that's how relationships begin. I'm Dennis Wilborn, and I'll see you next time on 15-Minute Mastery. Until then, keep the conversation going. But before I log off, it looks like we have a question. If a person doesn't give much response, what could you do to engage with them? Oh, that is a classic. If a person doesn't give much of a response, it could be because they're not interested in your question. It could be because you've asked a closed yes or no question instead of an open-ended question. It could be that they're shy. But most oftentimes, if you just change the wording or change the topic, you will get their attention and they'll be more likely to want to join in. I find this to be incredibly useful. If you're talking to a person and they just don't seem engaged, then you're probably talking about something that they're not interested in. So try to use your detective's eyes, look around, be like Sherlock Holmes, and try to find some clues about things that they may like. If they're walking around, I don't have my coffee cup, but if they're walking around with a coffee cup, start with a question. Oh, what kind of coffee do you like? Or what kind of coffee is that? Instead of, oh, do you like coffee? That's obvious. They have coffee. So ask them what kind is their favorite. That's a great question. What's your favorite something? Or you could say, oh, I just tried a new coffee shop. Have you seen it? Or what do you think of it? Because if they like coffee, that kind of thing. And if they don't respond to that, then maybe they're not coffee people, or maybe they're busy. But don't feel too upset. Just ask a different question. if you really want to engage with someone, ask a different question. All right. Okay. I would love to take more questions, and unfortunately, I don't have time. I have another session here in about 10 minutes, and I need a drink of water. So I look forward to seeing y'all here on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. It's 9:30 p.m. in Korea, 8:30 p.m. in Taiwan and Hong Kong, and anywhere else you might be watching. You're just going to have to do the math yourself. All right.